There was a group of African folk in this area known as the Garamantes. The Garamantes were the Africans from whence Hannibal came out of. Hannibal was a descendant of the Garamantes. St. Augustine was a descendant of the Garamantes. The Moors were descendants of the Garamantes. The Garamantes basically are African folk having moved out into this area because of climate, developed a culture and a way of living. And these were known as the Garamantes. And this is where, these are the Africans that would later become the Moors, move up into Morocco and Mauritania, and then move up into Al-Andalus. Al-Andalus, as you look at the word Al, if you look at it, basically has the formation of introducing a, it's almost, from what I can understand, it is like in the Islamic language, it's like a prefix, meaning something, what was going to follow would be spiritual, like Al-Islam, Al-Kameh. See, there is a spiritual formation using the word Al, which of course our word is all. Al-Anda. Anda means to walk in Spanish. Luz. Someone want to help me? Light. So Al-Andalus means to walk in the spiritual light. And that's what they named this country, or this, that we today call Spain and Portugal. But it was more than just that, because it touched in the southern parts of France. So the Garamantes were the North Africans, and they were contemporaries of the Kemites. In other words, when the Kemites had their wonderful civilizations, the Garamantes were also doing things. See, we're caught up in Egypt where we look at the pyramids and we look at, but we don't know that at the same time Egypt was flourishing, so was Sudan and Ethiopia. So was northern parts of Africa, including Western Africa. But you see, Egypt is the doorway to African wisdom by the European. They entered Africa through Europe. That's the only thing they know. So therefore, to them, when they write books, everything deals with Egypt. But as an African people, there were things going on in Africa that's just as dynamic. I'll give you another example in social studies. We teach our children about Native Americans, but what we do is that we take the same route Europeans took. We look at the Native Americans along the East Coast when we start teaching children about Native Americans. We don't teach them about what was going on down here. We teach them Native Americans the East Coast, basically where the 13 colonies were. The reality of it is that to understand the Native American nation, you've got to look at the Mississippi River. Because the Mississippi River to Native Americans was what Happy was to the Africans. You go to a place known as Cahokia, which, when you look at the Mississippi River, it almost becomes like a Y and then it comes down. Cahokia is located in southern Illinois. It is the largest pyramid in the northern hemisphere. There are over 110 pyramids along the Mississippi River. For more information on that, there's a book called, by Jack Weatherford, called Native Roots, Chapter 2. It's called Pyramids Along the Mississippi. There is evidence of Ramses III on the Mississippi River. There's a book called Ramses III, Father of America. Get that book and you'll see. Ramses, 1,500 years before the Christian era. Evidence. There is evidence of Africans in Davenport, Illinois. Evidence of Africans in California. Evidence of Africans in New York State. Thousands of years before the European even came to this area. See, we get the impression, because of what they have introduced, that everything started happening in 1492. There was lively and real trade amongst Africans and Native Americans thousands of years before the European even left the caves 2,000 years BC. There is evidence in Cahokia, Illinois, of trade going on with Native Americans of Brazil. There is evidence in Cahokia of artifacts of Native Americans from Canada. There is evidence of an attempted unification of the Native American world amongst the Siouan world, the Muskegon world, and what is known as the Haudenosaunee or the Iroquoian. There is evidence of the three languages coming together, and Cahokia almost was like Washington, D.C. for Native Americans. That was the center point, and you find it right in the middle. You find evidence of all three languages spoken throughout the American hemisphere of Native American peoples in Cahokia, almost like it's a repository of information. This pyramid I'm talking about is called Monk's Mound. Why? Because Monk's Mound is called because when the Trappist monks came to this area, they sat on the pyramid and took it over. And they started dismantling the stones and all the other things that built the pyramid to build their cities. So now when you go to these areas here, you see what are called mounds. But what you don't know is these mounds were once pyramids prior to Europeans dismantling the stones and the bricks and the mortar to build their homes that you see today. Now, this is real live history, and I would challenge anybody to refute it. Anybody. Because this is either here or it's not. It's either real or it's unreal. And if I am wrong, please correct me, because I want the right way. I don't want my way. I want the right way. But just as we study African people through what they experience, we think the only thing happening in this time is what's happening in Egypt. But there's in Cuba, if you read the book by Dr. Chancellor Williams, The Destruction of Black Civilization, he has a piece on Cuba. Central Africa, flourishing civilizations. In Africa, there are civilizations built on top of civilizations. The pyramids are much older than what they say. Not to mention the Sphinx. And when our children start getting into this wisdom and start bringing out their creative genius, and once the ancestors start tapping into their collective unconscious, they're going to be able to see things that we can't see, just like we're seeing things that those that came before us did not see. Not because anybody's better than the other, it's that every generation makes it better for the next. And so this work that we're doing now is as a roadmap. There is a curriculum here. A science curriculum, a math curriculum, language, arts, everything that our children are studying in school today can be brought in and can be done because, first of all, let me step back and tell you, there is no such thing as an African-centered curriculum. Now let me explain to you what I mean by that. When African scholars sat down and wrote all of their treatises on science and math, they did not write it and say, this is for African people. When they wrote it for any cosmic mind that was in balance and ready to receive information. When the European came upon this information, they had to put their name on things, and they only put their name on things they understood. Theodosius in the 4th century, Justinian in 529, closed all of the temples of the Greek and African educational centers and burned the books. Not to mention, as we come up into 1492, Bishop Lander will do in America to Native American what Cardinal Cisneros did to the Moorish books in Spain. They destroyed the books. Now, when the emperors destroyed the knowledge of the Kemites and what the Greeks got out of the Kemites in 429 and in 529, they plunged Europe into what they call the Dark Ages. The Moors then brought this knowledge back in, having translated the work of the Egyptians, having translated, the Moors translated the works of the Greeks, not knowing they were translating the works of their own ancestors that the Greeks had misunderstood. Africans such as Ibn Rushd, who is known as Averroes, or Ibn Sina, who is known as Ibn Sin, or Avicenna, they read the works of the Greeks, and there is a piece, it's called Egyptian Sacred Science and Al-Islam. It's one of the books that I recommended on the list that you have that spoke about my coming here, where he takes every one of these writers and authors and thinkers and talks about how they felt about the Greeks. They literally turned inside out. Ibn Sina literally turned inside out the Greek thought to bring it back to the Kemetic level. In other words, what the Greeks got wrong, the Moors corrected to make right again. They studied the work of the Sumerians and the Akkadians, all of the ancient work the Moors sent around the world for the works of the Chinese, everybody, and translated these works. And they were well aware of all of this wisdom and all of this knowledge. And they were able to bring it back. Now, what happened? Africans, remember, at this time also are sharing knowledge with Native Americans, and Native Americans are sharing their wisdom with African people, because it's a two-way street now.